the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
It's provided us significant opportunities for business development. Secondly, it has allowed us to retain and attract talented individuals who need to grow our business. And finally, it has helped us to create a greater awareness in the community of First Financial as a strong and stable local company.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. It's fascinating to watch long-established businesses and institutions reimagine themselves. First Financial Bank was founded in 1863 and headquartered in Hamilton, Ohio until 2009. In less than a decade, a bank that had historically been centered in Butler County, serving smaller communities in Ohio and Indiana, has transformed itself through several key acquisitions that nearly doubled the bank's assets to $6.7 billion, refocused on the metropolitan regions of Cincinnati, Dayton, and Indianapolis. The decision to move into what was formerly called the ChemEd Center on 4th Street and rebranded as the First Financial Center, First Financial has become very visible player in a very competitive space. I'm joined this morning by Claude Davis, the president and CEO of First Financial Bancorp. Mr. Davis joined the bank in 2004. Prior to joining First Financial, he was president of Irwin Union Bank and Trust in Columbus, Indiana, and he and his family live in Hamilton. Mr. Davis, welcome to
Thanks,
Newsmakers. And by the way, the little image that we showed, I understand that the sign is being put up right now, right? Or is it up yet?
It is not up yet, but it's going to be up hopefully by the end of May. We have scaffolding up, and the sign is being constructed as we speak, and hopefully you'll be able to see First Financial's name in the skyline here very shortly.
Which is the point. You're staking out a claim here.
It is.
Why did you make this decision? And this is a complex decision. It's not just a decision to move to downtown Cincinnati.
Right.
It was really a set of decisions about changing the character of the bank. Why did you do that?
Well, and that's a great observation, Dan. And I think it comes from the fact that what we saw when I joined the company in 2004, along with the board of directors, is that in order for us to really grow as a company, we needed to have a bigger presence in Cincinnati to be able to attack the metro area and serve those clients, as well as to attract the right talent to the company.
Well, you say that, but the bank, I assume, was doing okay up until that point, being what it had been. What catapults you? Was it a situation in the banking business where you either grow or you get eaten up?
Well, yeah, it was one of those where it was a part of our own success, right? We had become the #1 market share player in many of the smaller markets that we were banking. And so for us to be able to continue to grow, which to your point is important in the banking business. You have to have measured growth and risk appropriate growth, but you still need to grow. And for us, we were all around Cincinnati in terms of markets, but we weren't in the core of the market. And we felt for us to really be successful, to really continue to be able to provide the technology and the products and services for our clients in our existing markets, we needed to grow as a company.
So moving downtown, raising your image on this, but then also acquiring some of the other banks.
Right.
What's next? How do you continue this growth?
Well, first of all, we think about our core strategy around growth as one client at a time, or what we call organic growth. We view acquisition growth as occurring when we have the opportunity, and that it's strategic. In other words, it's in the right markets that we want to serve, that we can operationally integrate that acquisition, and that we pay the right price for it. And we were fortunate in 2009 to do 3 acquisitions, in 2011 to do 2, and it hit those 3 criteria that we look at. Now, that may mean that we never do another one again, or it may mean that we do several more. But it has to hit those 3 criteria for us to be successful.
Why am I highly suspicious that you may never do another one? Yeah, I don't think that's the way this sort of thing works. Okay, so you began this transformation. You came on board in 2004. this transformation begins to take place, and then all of a sudden 2007, 2008, the economic slowdown. Where did that leave your bank?
You know, sometimes it's you know, luck or fortune. It kind of plays on you, and we had spent really 2005, 2006, and early 2007 really repositioning the company from cleaning up our balance sheet, having a healthy balance sheet, if you will, investing in a new technology platform. And so we were in a strong position as the economy headed into the downturn, right? So we made sure that we were strong, and when it happened, which we didn't foresee coming,
right.
but you know, we were the product of it, opportunities presented themselves, and credit to our board and our associates and their ability to handle it, we were able to take advantage of those opportunities during the downturn.
So what about as you got into that downturn, which everybody did,
Right.
what was your bank's situation with bad loans?
Right.
Did you have a lot of that on your books?
We were fortunate we did not have a lot in comparison to the industry, but we did have some. I mean, we certainly made our share of bad loans during the crisis, or leading up to the crisis and then in the crisis, but it was manageable. You know, we were fortunate in that our bad credit was manageable, and it didn't distract us from our ability to continue to grow. And our board was able to see the difference in that and be able to say, look, we've got to deal with the problems we have, but we're strong enough to pursue growth, and it served us well.
Did you take federal loans?
We took,
or whatever those were?
Right. Well, we did participate in what was called the Troubled Asset
Right.
Relief Program, or TARP, as it's known. We received $80 million. We paid it back in early 2011, but it was one of those where we actually kept it at our holding company in a checking account for that entire period of time. And if you go back to 2008, during the peak of the crisis in the fall, when that program came out, we were one of the banks that were healthy and were asked to participate because it was the right thing to do for the economy. And we felt it was the right thing to do for our shareholders and for our local economies.
So if you were able to keep that in a bank, an account, why was it even necessary for you? Why would you have even been asked to participate? I guess I don't understand maybe from the government side.
Right. Well, understand in 2008, we were all worried that the whole financial system was going to fail. So none of us really knew what was ahead because we had never been in this situation before as an industry or as an economy. Mm-hmm. And so it was in effect insurance to make sure that the healthiest banks stayed healthy and could continue to lend in the local economies. Because take a bank like First Financial, if we all of a sudden stop lending, and we're one of the healthy banks, then the whole economy will seize up and not continue to function as it should. So it was an insurance, if you will.
When you start down a path of what I've termed reimagining yourself, do you have in your mind, and I'm not just meaning you, but I mean all of the people who are creating the strategy, do you have in your mind where you want to end up, or do you have in your mind the process, the road you want to go down, and you kind of will play it out and see where it leads you? Which of those two?
I think what you have, Dan, is a couple of things. One is you have a set of values that you say these are true to who we are, and whatever we do, we stick true to those values. Secondly, you have a view about how you want to serve your client base and how you want them to view you as a financial institution. And you create it around that, and if you stay true to your values and who you're trying to serve, then you're okay with whatever that produces in terms of asset size or growth. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really what allowed us to be successful over the last few years, is sticking true to those two things.
So you're still a bank that's, is it fair to say, regional bank, headquartered in Cincinnati, but as I said, strong now in the metro areas of Indianapolis and Dayton. Who do you see yourself competing with? Fifth Third, which is not exactly a national bank, but much larger. Yes. U.S. Bank, which has got even different configuration. Mm-hmm. How does this all fit together? How do you see yourself in the market of these other banks?
Well, we would be considered a small regional bank because we operate in Ohio, Indiana, and Kentucky, 136 banking centers. And we have all the same products and services: commercial banking, retail banking, wealth management. And we do compete with the good banks that you mentioned, Fifth Third, U.S. Bank, PNC. Those are all great institutions. But we also compete with the smallest banks in those regions as well. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be able to effectively compete with both sizes, if you will, and we think we do it pretty well.
Let's talk a little bit here about where you think we're going, not so much for your bank, right, but for the economy. Here we are in April 2012. In some ways, it seems like a long time since the crisis. In other ways, it still feels like we're part of this. Where would you evaluate we are?
You know, I describe it as we're in the slow grind up. You know, we're seeing real positive signs. A lot of our manufacturing clients are doing very well. We're seeing consumers become less conservative. The housing market is still very stressed, although prices are not declining at the same rate, and they seem to have stabilized nationally. So if we can get housing turned around and then beginning to improve, and if unemployment can begin to decline, which I think is really tied to housing improving and businesses being willing to invest in capital expenditures again, if those two things happen, I think we see a much stronger economy, probably 2013, 2014.
So you think we have to still slog it through in 2012 and get past the elections? Can I just say that? Is everybody sort of waiting to see what happens?
I think they are. Well, we need to keep repairing the damage that got created, not in 08, 09, that was the result of the damage, right, but the damage that got created in 04, 05, 06, 07. Repair that. We do need to get past the elections because of the uncertainty that exists around policy, as well as Europe needs to heal some of their problems. And I think all those happen and we see a much better 2013.
Okay. What about the job front?
The job front is still difficult. Businesses, we saw a real change in our client base in 08 where people immediately reduced kind of headcounts, and they proved to themselves that they can operate with fewer people, and as a result, they're more profitable. We need activity to come back. We need growth in the economy to come back. And then I think we'll see a slowly improving unemployment level. 8.2% is too high. And we really need to see that come down significantly for everybody to prosper.
Well, thank you for being here this morning, and it's going to be fun. It's always fun to have a new big player in town, and anybody who puts their name up on one of those buildings on 4th Street, you're a big player, no matter how you position yourself. So it's fun to watch how this is going to play out. So good luck, and help lead us out of all of this.
Great. Thank you, Dan.
Stay tuned. Right after the break, I'll be joined for another Newsmakers interview. Welcome back. President John F. Kennedy once said, "The educated citizen has an obligation to serve the public. He can be a precinct worker or a president. He may give his talents at the courthouse, the State House, or the White House. He may be a civil servant or a senator, a candidate or a campaign worker, a winner or a loser, but he must be a participant and not a spectator." Those words are on the front page of the Institute for Politics at Harvard University. The Institute, created in 1966, is now led by Northern Kentuckian Trey Grayson. I'm joined this morning by Trey Grayson, who is back in the area for a visit. Elected in 2003 at the age of 31, Mr. Grayson served 2 terms as Secretary of State for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. In 2010, he ran for the U.S. Senate, seat being vacated by the retiring Jim Bunning, but was defeated in the party primary by Rand Paul on a wave of Tea Party activism. In January 2011, Mr. Grayson became the director of the Institute for Politics at the John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. Trey, welcome back to Newsmakers, and welcome back to the area.
Thanks. It's glad to be home.
Now, after a couple of years here at Harvard in Massachusetts, How does politics look different from standing in the Harvard yard versus standing on the steps at the Capitol in Frankfurt? Has this helped you sort of see things from a different point of view?
Well, first of all, like being a Republican in Massachusetts is sort of like being a Democrat in Boone County, where we were living before we moved up there. One of the things is that up there, I tend to look at politics more from a national or international focus. I mean, we have all these political and national political and policy figures coming through. And I don't pay as much attention to Massachusetts. It's hard to keep up with what's going on in Kentucky. So you really do have more of this kind of national perspective. I think the other thing is being able to just look and see some of the trends, like in the intro you talked about the Tea Party wave that hit Kentucky, hit me in 2010, seeing how that's being played out around the country, both from an academic perspective, because we have professors studying it, as well as from a practitioner standpoint, and we have a lot of practitioners coming through to campus.
So talk to me a little bit about what the Institute does.
Sure.
There's a whole bunch of programs.
Yeah.
I'm going to give people the website for later, but what's it do, what's its purpose, and who's it for?
So basically a twofold mission. One, and the primary mission, is to inspire students, particularly undergraduates, to pursue careers in politics and public service, or at least to become more excited about that, so that if they do something else, that they'll be that engaged citizen like President Kennedy talked about in that speech at Vanderbilt University. Mm-hmm. The second part is to bridge the academic and political worlds. You know, there's a lot of reference, and actually Mitt Romney talks about President Obama spending too much time in the Harvard faculty lounge, and what he's referring to, I think, is sometimes the academics are a little bit disconnected from the folks on the ground. And similarly, the folks on the ground, the practitioners of politics, could probably run their campaigns better and implement better policy if they were a little bit more grounded in solid research. So we want to be that bridge. And we don't have classes. Everything is extracurricular. And we've got a couple hundred students that come through our doors to help us plan our activities, along with a staff of about 17, and I direct that staff.
And you were saying when you were an undergraduate at Harvard, you were involved.
I was. We have a student advisory committee, which is like our governing board, and I was the vice chair, which would be the number 2 position at the time. I actually lost the race to be the chair on that committee. And then after I became Secretary of State, was put on the board. We're completely nonpartisan. We've got Republicans and Democrats coming through all the time, and it's a great place for people who love politics and believe that we can make a difference.
When I looked at the board too, Republicans and Democrats who are on the board at every level, this is not just two-party, but multi-perspectives going on here.
Yeah, we've got Ken Duberstein, who was Ronald Reagan's last chief of staff, Elaine Chao, former Secretary of Labor, wife of Mitch McConnell, Caroline Kennedy's our board chair, John Kerry, Senator Kerry's on our board as well, and a lot of other practitioners.
With all of these people coming through the Institute, and you're hearing people talking about it, analyzing what's going on right now, okay, we're now headed into the heart of the presidential race for 2012, which will also mean congressional races, lots of Senate races. As you look forward in this year, what do you see happening in terms of the character of our political system?
Well, for the system right now is being stressed. It's being pulled, it's like a wishbone right now, it's being pulled by forces on the left and on the right. And many of the folks who are governing our states and our nation believe that they'd rather fight and try to win an election and get in a better position to advance their agenda than trying to see if it's possible to find common ground or not. And we're in a real struggle right now. And at the state level and the federal level, we've got some pretty serious problems. From the deficit at the state levels, these pension issues are very, very hard. And we're all trying to fix education so that we can compete in this global economy. So it's tough right now, and public folks around the country are upset with their elected officials. The joke is that Congress has an 8% approval rating, and we're all wondering about the 8%.
Right.
Who are they? There aren't that many relatives of members of Congress or employees of Congress. What we have a particular concern in right now in looking at this is we have this millennial generation, which is the largest generation the Earth has ever seen, that have started to become more and more of a factor in our politics. And there's a real question, and we actually have a survey going to come out next week, which I don't know the results yet. They won't tell me, so I don't spill the beans on shows like this.
Okay.
But on Tuesday,
which is unfortunate from a journalist's point of view.
For you,
yes.
Correct. But on Tuesday, we're going to have this. We're going to announce the results, and what we're trying to figure out is how engaged are these young people going to be? What are their attitudes? They're probably still going to be pro-Obama, but will they show up? Will they volunteer the way they did in 2008? That's going to be a big story, I think, in this presidential election, and that will trickle down to the Senate races like here in Ohio and the congressional race like the one in Central Kentucky.
Well, that's also true in the Republican Party.
Correct.
With Mitt Romney now coming out ahead after a brutal primary process. It looks like unity's taking place, but it's not just, yes, if people show up, they will vote for Mitt Romney, but how excited will they be, not only to vote, but also to work, contribute. All of those are factors.
Yeah, we do. And among young voters, we saw a lot of appeal for Congressman Paul's campaign. So he's got to bring these people in. I'm confident that the conservatives, the Republicans that go in and vote, they're going to vote for him. But they do need to be inspired, because these are your grassroots. These are the people that knock on the doors and make the phone calls. And the Republican Party turnout operation really depends upon these volunteers.
Do you see yourself, how do you imagine yourself? I know you're not in the fray now.
Right.
But as you talk about that we're stressed in this situation, that the politicians in the system are pulling on both sides and not necessarily looking for areas of cooperation and compromise, how do you see what you did while you were in office? How do you see yourself as a politician?
Well, I'd like to think I was one of those people who tried to work to get things done. In fact, my tagline when I ran for re-election was working hard to get things done, and that I had a certain amount of accomplishments. But I was an executive official, so I had a certain portfolio which gave me some flexibility to make some decisions, but at the same time it was defined by the laws, by the legislature, so certain things I couldn't do. One of the things that we try to do at the IOP is to try to help this. Again, not left or right, just trying to make things work better. So one is to inspire these kids. The second thing, though, is to step in where we can with a convening power. So actually, in a couple months, one of the things we're going to do is get Republicans and Democrats Democrats from the 2008 campaign, Republicans who went through this current campaign, and talk about how to fix the presidential primary debate system. We thought there were too many. They weren't as substantive as they could have been. They took the candidates away from the campaign trail where they could actually encounter and interact with voters. So we're going to convene people and see if we can come up with a better system that still gives the candidates a chance to advance their views, but balance the campaign needs.
Well, that whole thing about debates, and it's not just in the Republican primary debates, but we could talk about that with the presidential debates that I assume will happen.
Yeah.
As someone who does this show, and sometimes am asked to moderate those kinds of debates, I get so frustrated with them because it's a minute here, 30 seconds respond, 30 seconds back.
Right.
And if the question gets totally avoided, you can't stop it and make it change.
Right.
They're not real communications. All those people are so prepped before they go on about what they're supposed to say.
Well, the best ones probably are the presidential general election debates. They've got the best moderators. They have rules that require the candidates to talk a little bit more to get beyond those 30-second sound bites. And you've got two of the best types of, these are folks who've gone through, in this year's case, we've got somebody who's been a president for a term, and now we have a governor who's kind of done this tight walk now for two cycles. So they're at the top of their game. And I was talking to Jim Lehrer, we had him in to talk about his experience. He's moderated probably more debates than anyone about that. And he said it works okay. And his view was let them talk and then let the voters decide. So if they're dodging the questions like you've experienced, the voters are going to see that and say, this guy's a little squirrely, or this woman's a little squirrely, and then factor that in, hopefully, when they decide to go vote.
Which is exactly what I say all the time about this. Let people talk.
Yeah.
And the viewers are smarter than we give them credit for.
Yeah.
Sort of a final thing before we run out of time. What do you see yourself? Do you see yourself staying in Boston for a while? Do you see yourself coming back to Kentucky? You have children, you've made that move.
Right.
What do you see?
It is hard. The girls are 8 and 11, and it's an amazing experience to have them grow up around Harvard's campus and around these figures that are coming through. I gave a 5-year commitment, but it's a handshake commitment. They could fire me tomorrow, I could leave tomorrow, but I want to make sure I honor those 5 years, and then we'll figure it out. I do want to get home. I'd love to run again. Losing the last race wasn't a terrible experience. It tells me to say, I'm never going to do this again. And I still believe in that my service, I can make a difference. So I'd like to figure that out. I just don't know how, but I didn't expect to be Secretary of State at 31, so I'm just enjoying this ride.
Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And let's stay in touch.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Have fun in Boston. It's
Thanks.
great city. Thank you for making Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. And I will be joined next week by Vice Mayor Roxanne Claude. Have a good week.